We've seen incredible volatility around these cannabis stocks. Is this going to be one of those stories where it's better to travel than arrive? The anticipation is greater than the hit.
Well, indeed, if you take a look at the reaction in the market today for all the large pot stocks in Canada, they are down today. But, you know, today is the first day of legalization. They've had a huge run up to this point. So, you know, it might be a case of, you know, selling the news, so to speak. But they have been experiencing incredible gains for the year. Today is the first day of legalization. We'll see where it goes from here.
Right. What about a halo effect on other stocks? I noticed that some of our reporters were out at the dispensaries today and were tweeting back some anecdotal evidence that people were going into restaurants afterwards.
Yeah, so actually I was one of those reporters. I was actually out in one of the Toronto events. It was called a Wake and Bake. It was one that started at 7 in the morning, and you know, there was a lot of fanfare and activity around that. Not a lot of pot smoking, to be honest, and I actually talked to one of the people behind the event, and he basically said pot smokers aren't up at this time in the morning. But having said that, my colleague Christine, she was in Halifax, which was one of the first places where we saw stores open, and you know, there were 130 people plus lined up to buy pot on opening day.
Doug, what are analysts saying about what happens next? Do we get consolidation amongst the cannabis stocks? How does it actually work in terms of the business models and the way they're going to evolve?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question. So here's a situation of we have now more than 140 publicly traded companies tied to cannabis in Canada. It's a market cap of more than 60 billion Canadian. A lot of those companies are very, very small. We have seen some consolidation so far among the bigger players. I think the analysts and investment bankers I've talked to expect that to continue. It's a lot of companies for a very small industry, so you know, there will be some survivors, and I think there'll be a lot also that don't.
Scotiabank today comparing cannabis to the chocolate industry and saying there is real money to be made and that investors should shift their focus from just grams of weed sold as a product to cannabis sold as an ingredient. Is that where the focus for investors will shift to now?
Yeah, so there is a lot of uses for cannabis. You know, it's not just basically rolling joints, and that, you know, there are the medical cannabis industry, which has been in Canada for a while now, and that's been legal for a while. Today's announcement is basically giving legalization to recreational. But, you know, the big cannabis companies, those like Tilray and Canopy Growth and that, they're already looking abroad for new markets in that. And when they're looking abroad, they're looking at the recreational market, they're looking at you know, the market for oils, CBD, ingredients that could go into other things. Edibles will be eventually a market that they will look to. So there are a lot of opportunities that these companies are eyeing at this point.